Now, the Public Accounts Committee this week published their report into the potential impact of leaving the EU without a deal, warning of chaos at the country's ports. The chair of that committee is Labour's Meg Hillier, and she joins us now. Thank you very much for being with us. So what did your report find then?
Well, we've produced actually 8 reports in the last year, and there's a common theme, Sophie, through those, that it's going to be very challenging to be ready to leave the EU on whatever terms. The civil service has been hampered by having to work on 3 options: a deal with a transition period and no deal. And as we reach this end game, or the end game, I don't know how many end games we've been having. The beginning of one of the end games. With only 3 months to go. There's certainly, in the civil service's own words, it's a suboptimal outcome that we'll see, especially if we crash out with no deal. So it's been a real challenge, and also hugely expensive. Sometimes something that's got lost in this. The expense to the taxpayer of preparing for 3 options is immense, and just the preparations for leaving under whatever grounds is expensive.
Should the government have done more preparations for no deal? That's what the accusation has been.
Well, actually, I mean, if you look right back, so when David Cameron first triggered this, he did not need to set the referendum up so quickly without any preparation for what that would mean. Then Theresa May came in and she triggered Article 50 very quickly. I voted against it, partly on those very practical grounds that you couldn't deliver in time what you needed to do. And then she called a general election to delay things further. So they pushed this false deadline on themselves, and no wonder we're in chaos now.
What should happen if Theresa May, as we expect, loses the vote next week?
Well, there's potentially several options that could arise from that. I mean, I think that we're hearing her own side she can't bring with her. So she'll have to bring them with her and the DUP in order to get a majority, and that's looking unlikely for Tuesday, but even for the various options after that, very difficult to know how it will be achieved. And I think it's really interesting if you look at how the Conservative Party has approached this. David Cameron threw what he thought was red meat to the Brexiteers right at the beginning, and Theresa May has followed that through. They will never be satisfied, some of those people, and I think some of them want to crash out without a deal. That, I think,
well, they wouldn't see it as crashing out, would they? They would see it as leaving on WTO terms, which they would say is better than the current deal. Well,
I don't think it. I think if you look at even the current deal, which I don't think is a good deal, at least there's a bit of management there, there's a transition period, and there's some opportunity to keep discussions going with Europe. And that's the key thing. If you just have a hard deadline, then all of those discussions come to an abrupt halt, and Britain will not be prepared. And we have looked at this in detail. And let's be clear, my committee is a cross-party committee. We've got a range of different views on Brexit. Our 8 reports have been unanimous reports.
So what should happen then, in your view? Are we talking second referendum? Are we talking, a Norway-style EA, so-called soft Brexit? What should happen?
I wish it was as simple as that. I think what we will find that the deal goes down. I'm pretty sure of that. Then it's up to the ball falls back into the Prime Minister's hands. There are various options, as we know. There could be no confidence votes. There could be she could come back with some better deal from Brussels, though it's very difficult to know what she could achieve at this point. What I'm really clear about, and I think Hilary Benn's amendment is a really important one, is that we need to rule out as a parliament no deal.
At the same time, though, it's easy just to rule out all the options that you don't really like. You've got to come up with an option that, even if you don't think it's brilliant, is the least worst scenario. So what would that be?
Yeah, well, I've been very clear that, personally, this is speaking less than from the committee, more, that if we can't reach a decision, well, first of all, the executive has failed. The government can't deliver what it set out to deliver. If Parliament then cannot agree, then I think we need to look back to the public, and that could be a general election or it could be a second referendum. Both of those are potentially very divisive. Both of those will require very tight questions, very clear options. We will be scrutinised, both major parties, about exactly what that offer would be. And I think but then that means that would be the only way out of an impasse. If the government can't deliver, and if Parliament can't deliver, then that would be the only option going forward.
You sort of described yourself as a reluctant supporter of a second referendum. At the same time, you voted Remain, your constituency is very heavily Remain. You voted against the triggering of Article 50, which led to the whole process of leaving the EU. Some people would say, I don't really believe that you're very reluctant at all. This is exactly what you wanted for.
Well, I certainly didn't want to see us go through chaos, and I think there's 2 strands to this. There's my absolute, love for the EU and my passionate desire I wanted to stay. I'm passionate about it during the referendum and very devastated by the result. But we are where we are now, and we've got to find a way forward from where we are now. And that either means that both sides compromise and we find some way forward, and the Prime Minister has failed in delivering that. Or if that is not going to happen through the structures of our democracy, through Parliament and through the government, then it would have to go back to the people. But I think why I've been reluctant is I am not unaware of the huge risks of opening this up again. We had the country divided down the middle, and it's not clear that would be less of a divide if we went back. So we need to be clear about the
So you could lose, basically.
So that, of course, and that's always a prospect. But also, the the result could go the other way, and then that will still have a divide. So the nation's divided. So one other thing I would say, and one of the reasons I'm moving in very much in this direction, is that this is now a different question. We've got a deal on the table, though Parliament's likely to reject that next week. And this is much more detailed than was in the original referendum. So it would have to be a different question. If we just go back to repeat the referendum, that would, I think, counter it. But I think this all throws up that the referendum doesn't fit very well with our model of government. If we were in Ireland, where they do this all the time because of their constitution, they have a much clearer message. So I think the challenge will be, whether it's a general election or a second referendum, the people having a say, the people need to know exactly what the details are, and that needs to be laid out very clearly.
OK, Meg Hillier, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning.